I stopped paying sister's education, but now I am the enemy of family because how could I? I got angry and made this for her birthday, and that shocked everyone. You know the saying, family is everything. I used to believe that with all my heart. I built my whole life around it. But now, when people say it, I want to laugh. Or cry. It's complicated. For years, I was the one holding it all together. My husband, Brian, was between jobs for 4 years, which is a polite way of saying he didn't lift a finger to work. I covered everything: rent, groceries, car payments, his endless hobbies. Then there were my parents. They hadn't paid a bill in 6 years. I covered their utilities, their mortgage, even their subscription services, in case, God forbid, they missed an episode of their favorite show. Then there was my sister Stacy. Sweet Stacy, who I'd been paying for ever since she decided to go back to school for her dream career. I paid for her tuition, her books, her rent, everything. All because I had a good job, and in her eyes that meant I owed her. I didn't think twice about it for a long time. I told myself, this is what you do for the people you love. You sacrifice. You make it work. But I started to notice how much they took it for granted. There was never a thank you. Never a moment where they tried to ease my burden. And every time I brought up boundaries or said I was tired, they'd guilt me with some version of, but we need you. It all came crashing down last year when I started having panic attacks. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, feeling like I couldn't breathe. I couldn't remember the last time I'd done anything for myself, and I could barely recognize the person in the mirror. That's when I finally went to see a therapist. Her words changed everything. She said, "Why do you think her happiness is your responsibility? You're not their parent. They're not children." At first I argued like I'd been programmed to. But they need me. If I don't help, what will they do? She just looked at me and said, "Maybe it's time for them to find out." It was like a switch went on. I started to realize how much I'd enabled them, how much I'd been taken advantage of. And I realized that I was angry. Not just at them, but at myself. I'd let it happen. I'd let them treat me like a walking ATM. The first person I dealt with was Brian. I told him he needed to get a job. He laughed. Really laughed. He said, "Why should I? You're doing fine. We don't need any more money." That was the first real crack in our marriage. Then I called my parents and told them I wasn't going to pay their bills anymore. My mom started crying and said I was abandoning them. My father muttered something about me being ungrateful. I hung up the phone before I said something I'd regret. The real explosion came at a family dinner a week later. It was supposed to be a nice evening, but I had decided to tell Stacy that I couldn't pay for her school anymore. When I said it, she looked stunned. Then she got angry. "Are you serious?" she said. "You know I can't afford it without you. How can you just stop? You're being selfish." My parents chimed in, saying that I had changed, that I wasn't the same person anymore. Even Brian chimed in, saying I was being dramatic. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, looked at them all and said, "You know what? Go to hell. All of you. This is just the beginning." Then I grabbed my purse and I walked out. That night I checked into a hotel because I couldn't stand the thought of going home to Brian. I didn't talk to either of them for a week. But that was just the calm before the storm. After that dinner, the silence was deafening. No calls, no texts, nothing. At first I thought it was a blessing. I had time to think, to breathe, and to feel the weight of everything I'd been carrying slowly lift off my shoulders. But deep down I knew it wasn't over. People like her don't let go that easily. A week later, Stacy's 20th birthday was coming up. I wasn't planning on going. In fact, I told myself there was no way I was going to walk into a room full of people who saw me as nothing more than a wallet with legs. But then I thought about it. If I didn't show up, they'd make up some story about how I was too busy or too selfish to take care of my own sister. So I went. But I went on my own terms. When I arrived, I could tell right away that something was wrong. Everyone was too friendly, too fake. My parents greeted me like nothing had happened. Brian gave me this smug little nod, and Stacy barely looked at me. Her friends were there too, along with some of our extended family. It felt like they'd all been briefed beforehand, like there was a script they were following to make me feel small. I sat through it, biting my tongue. The whispers, the side glances, the little jabs about how Stacy deserves support, and how family should always stick together. It was like they were all in on an inside joke and I was the punchline. When Stacy got up to speak, I knew I'd reached my limit. She thanked everyone for coming and then, without missing a beat, said something that made my blood boil. I just want to thank my parents and my amazing brother-in-law for always supporting me. And of course my sister, who was always there for me. I don't know what changed, but I hope she finds her way back to the person we all loved. The room fell silent and all eyes turned to me. I could feel the heat rising in my face, but I didn't say anything. Not yet. I just sat there, smiling politely, as if her words hadn't cut me like a knife. When she finished, everyone started clapping. I stood up. Actually, Stacy, I'd like to say a few words, I said. The room fell silent. I reached into my bag and pulled out a stack of papers. At first they didn't know what they were. But as I unfolded them and held them up, I saw Brian's face go pale. These, I said, are divorce papers. Brian, I'm going to file them first thing Monday morning. You're going to have to find another way to pay for your video game subscriptions. You could have heard a pin drop. My mom gasped. My dad just stared at me like I'd lost my mind. But I wasn't done. Stacy, happy birthday. Consider this my present to you. I won't be paying your tuition, rent, or anything else from now on. You're an adult. Time to start acting like one. I turned to my parents. And as for you too, I think 6 years of paying your bills is more than enough. Maybe sell one of your cars if you're having trouble. You have options. I paused, letting it all sink in. Oh, and one more thing. I'm moving. I'm starting a new job in another state next month. None of you will ever see another dollar from me. The room erupted. My mom started screaming, Stacy was crying, and Brian tried to pull me aside, but I shook him off. I didn't care. I felt free for the first time in years. I walked out of the party with my head held high, leaving them all in shock. But as I drove away, I knew this wasn't just about cutting them off financially. It was about finally getting my life back. What I didn't know was how much better it was going to get. The morning after Stacy's birthday party, I woke up with a mixture of relief and dread. Relief because I had finally stood up for myself, dread because I knew they wouldn't let it go. I hadn't even finished my coffee before the phone call started. First it was Brian. I didn't answer. Then my mom. Then Stacy. By noon, I'd received over 30 missed calls and a handful of texts, ranging from angry rants to guilt trips. Stacy's messages were the worst. You're ruining my life. I can't believe you would do this to your own sister. You're a monster. I ignored them all. But then something unexpected happened. Around 3 p.m., I received a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered it. It was Stacy's best friend, Olivia. Hey, I know this is weird, she said, but I think you should know something. They're planning on confronting you. All of them. Your parents, Brian, Stacy, they say you've lost your mind and need an intervention. I laughed out loud. An intervention? For what? Not wanting to finance their lives anymore? Basically, Olivia said. I just thought you should know. They're really mad. I thanked her and hung up, wondering what their next move would be. But honestly, I wasn't worried. I'd made my decision and I wasn't backing down. Then came the second surprise. That evening I received an email from Brian's old employer. At first I thought it was some kind of mistake, but when I opened it, I realized it wasn't. It was a copy of his resignation letter from 4 years ago. The reason? Misconduct. Specifically, he'd been caught using company funds for personal expenses. I stared at the email, my stomach churning. He'd always told me he'd been let go because of downsizing. This was a whole other level of betrayal. I forwarded the email to him without a word. 5 minutes later, my cell phone buzzed. It was Brian. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. "It's the truth," I said. "Funny how you forgot to mention it when I was paying all the bills." He tried to defend himself, but I hung up on him. I didn't have time for his excuses. The third bomb dropped 2 days later. I was packing up my apartment when there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find my father standing there, looking furious. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside, bracing myself for whatever lecture he'd prepared. But what he said next took me completely by surprise. "You're breaking your mother's heart," he said. "But honestly, I don't blame you. She's been spending your money like it grows on trees. You should see her credit card bills. And Stacy? She's been pocketing extra cash from what you send her. She says it's for school, but she's been using it for vacations and shopping sprees." I just stared at him, speechless. He sighed and shook his head. "Look, I don't agree with how you're handling this, but I understand. I just wish you would have talked to me first." I didn't know what to say. Part of me was angry that he'd let this happen, but another part of me felt validated. For the first time, someone in my family admitted that I wasn't crazy. He left soon after, and I went back to packing, my mind racing. I knew things were bad, but I hadn't realized how much they were taking advantage of me. The final twist came a week later, the day I officially filed the divorce papers. I was at the courthouse, waiting in line, when a man approached me. He was tall, well-dressed, and carrying a briefcase. "Excuse me," he said. "Are you my name?" I nodded, confused. He handed me the folder. "You've been served," he said. Then he walked away. I opened the folder to find a lawsuit. Brian was suing me for spousal support. He claimed that because he'd been out of work for so long, he was entitled to some of my income, even after the divorce. I couldn't believe it. After all I'd done for him, he was trying to bleed me dry on his way out the door. But instead of crying or panicking, I smiled. Because if he thought he was going to win, he had no idea who he was up against. The lawsuit was the final straw. Brian suing me for spousal support felt like the ultimate betrayal. It wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about control. He couldn't stand the idea of me breaking free, so he decided to drag me back down any way he could. But if he thought I was going to roll over and let him win, he was sorely mistaken. The first thing I did was hire a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, a shark. Her name was Melissa, and she came highly recommended by a colleague of mine who had gone through a messy divorce of her own. When I told Melissa everything Brian had done, she smiled and said, "Don't worry. We'll figure it out." Within a week, we had gathered enough evidence to bury him. The email from his former employer about his misconduct? Check. Bank statements showing how he drained our joint account for his hobbies? Check again. A folder full of screenshots of his social media posts bragging about not working because his sugar mama had it covered? Jackpot. But the real bombshell came when Melissa uncovered something I hadn't even thought to look for. Brian had been funneling money into a secret account. As we dug deeper, we found out why he'd been spending it on another woman. At first I was shocked. Then I was angry. Not because I still cared about Brian, I was long past that, but because he had the audacity to play the victim while cheating behind my back. Melissa filed a countersuit for fraud, claiming he'd misused marital funds. By the time we were done, his claim for spousal support looked like a bad joke. But I didn't stop there. I decided to confront my family one last time before I left for good. I invited them all to dinner at a nice restaurant, not to reconcile, but to get it all out in the open. If they were going to hate me, they might as well know the truth. When I walked in, they were all there, my parents, Stacy, and even Brian. The tension was palpable, but I kept my cool. I sat down, ordered a drink, and began to speak. "I wanted to thank you all for coming," I said. "I know things have been tense lately, but I thought you should hear this directly from me. I pulled out a folder and handed it to Stacy. This is a detailed accounting of where all the money I've sent you over the years has gone. Funny how school expenses included trips to Cabo and designer handbags. Her face turned red, but I didn't give her a chance to speak. I turned to my parents next. Mom, Dad, did you know that Stacy wasn't the only one mismanaging her money? Because I also have a copy of your credit card statements. I paid those bills, remember? You spent thousands on luxuries while claiming you couldn't afford basic necessities. My mother looked like she was going to faint. My father just stared at the table. Finally, I turned to Brian. And you? You're the cherry on top. Not only did you lie about why you lost your job, but you've been stashing away money to spend on your little sidekick. I hope she's worth it, because when this divorce is finalized, you'll be left with nothing. The room exploded. Stacy was crying, my mom was screaming, my dad was trying to calm her down, and Brian was stammering out excuses. I just sat there sipping my drink and letting it all wash over me. When they finally calmed down, I stood up. I'm leaving next week, I said. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't ask me for help. I'm done. I walked out of that restaurant feeling lighter than I had in years. But the biggest surprise came a few days later, just as I was getting ready to move. A few days before my move, I received an email that stopped me in my tracks. It wasn't from Brian, Stacy, or my parents. It was from Olivia, Stacy's best friend, the same one who'd warned me about her intervention. The subject line read, "You need to see this." Curious, I opened it. Attached was a screenshot of a group chat one to which I had not been invited. The participants were my parents, Stacy, Brian, and a few other family members. My heart sank as I began to read. The messages painted a stark picture. They weren't just angry at me for cutting them off, they were plotting to sabotage me. Stacy, we can't just let her walk away. She owes us. Brian, I'm already suing her, but we need to hit her where it hurts. I can dig up dirt at her job. Mom, what if we show up at her job? Make a scene? That'll embarrass her. Dad, she'll cave if we push hard enough. She always does. I felt a wave of anger and betrayal unlike anything I'd ever experienced. They weren't just upset, they were actively trying to ruin me. And for what? Because I dared to stop letting them run roughshod over me? I forwarded the email to Melissa, who responded almost immediately. This is harassment. She wrote. We can use this. But before I could even decide what to do, something unexpected happened. That afternoon, as I was packing the last of my things, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, I saw Olivia standing there. I didn't know if you wanted to see me, she said, but I had to come. I invited her in and we sat down. She looked nervous, as if debating whether or not to speak. Finally she said, I've been friends with Stacy for a long time, but after everything that's happened I can't keep quiet anymore. She pulled out her phone and showed me a series of screenshots. They were more messages from the group chat, including plans to track me down after I moved, and even discussions about how to manipulate me into coming back. I'm done with them, Olivia said. I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. Her apology felt genuine, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like someone was on my side. Thank you, I said. You don't know how much that means to me. With Olivia's help, I documented everything. The next morning, Melissa filed a cease and desist letter, warning my family that any further attempts to harass or contact me would result in legal action. But the surprises weren't over. 2 days later, as I was loading up my car to drive to my new job, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was from Brian's social media account, a public post, no less. It read, "Some people will throw their family away for money. Sad how selfish the world has become." The comments were full of sympathy from his friends and followers, most of whom had no idea what was really going on. I almost ignored it, but then I had an idea. I screenshotted his post, along with the evidence of his cheating, the hidden bank account, and his lawsuit. Then I wrote my own post. Some people will lie, cheat, and steal while pretending to be the victim. Sad how manipulative the world has become. Here's the truth, if anyone is curious. I attached the screenshots and hit post. It went viral within hours. By the end of the day, Brian had deleted his account, Stacy had made hers private, and my parents were eerily silent. The narrative they'd been trying to spin was officially dead. But the real victory came a week later, after I'd settled into my new apartment. I got a call from Melissa with the news: Brian had dropped his lawsuit. "It's over," she said. "He knows he can't win." For the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. It's been 6 months since I left my old life, and I can honestly say I've never been happier. It wasn't easy at first, starting over never is. But every day since has been a reminder that I made the right choice. Brian and I are now officially divorced. I didn't owe him a dime, and Melissa made sure he couldn't come after me again. Last I heard, he was still unemployed and couch surfing with a friend. Stacy dropped out of school when she couldn't afford the tuition, and my parents ended up selling their second car to pay the bills. I don't feel guilty about any of this. They had every opportunity to make it on their own, but they chose to lean on me instead. It's not my fault they fell when I walked away. Moving to another state was the best decision I've ever made. I found a great place to live, made some new friends, and even started dating someone. His name is Adam, and he's the opposite of Brian. He has his own career, his own ambitions, and get this, he actually insists on paying for things. The first time he picked up the check at dinner, I almost cried. It felt so strange to be with someone who didn't expect anything from me except my time and affection. But the real victory is how much I've changed. I've learned to set boundaries, to say no without feeling like I owe anyone an explanation. My therapist calls it taking back my power, and she's right. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm living for myself and not everyone else. I haven't talked to my family since I left. At first they tried to reach out, phone calls, texts, even emails. But when they realized I wasn't going to respond, they stopped. I'm sure they have their version of the story, where I'm the villain for abandoning them. And you know what? Let them have it. I'm not going to waste another second trying to change their minds. The other day I received an unexpected message from Olivia. She wanted to let me know that she's still done with Stacy and my family, and to thank me for inspiring her to stand up for herself and her own life. It was a small thing, but it meant the world to me. Looking back, I can't believe I let things go on as long as I did. But I'm not angry anymore. If anything, I'm grateful. Because hitting rock bottom forced me to rebuild my life from the ground up, and the life I've built is so much better than the one I left behind. If you're reading this and you feel stuck, like you're drowning in other people's expectations, I hope my story gives you courage. It's scary to put yourself first, but trust me, it's worth it.